Hollywood has always been a land of dreams, where people come to make their fantasies come true. But behind the glitz and glamour, there are secrets, dark and disturbing, that few ever see. My name is Emily, and I moved to Hollywood with dreams of becoming a star. Little did I know, I would uncover the true cursed heart of this city. I arrived in Hollywood with stars in my eyes, my heart racing with excitement. The palm-lined streets and bright billboards promised a life of fame and fortune. I found a small apartment just off Sunset Boulevard, a charming place with a view of the Hollywood sign. My neighbor, Mrs. Larson, an elderly woman with a penchant for gossip, welcomed me warmly. "Welcome to Hollywood, dear," she said, her eyes twinkling. "This place is full of stories, some you wouldn't believe." I smiled, thinking she was referring to celebrity tales and scandals. But as I settled into my new life, strange things began to happen. It started with the whispers. At night, as I lay in bed, I could hear faint murmurs through the walls. At first I thought it was my neighbors, but the sounds were too eerie, too disjointed to be normal conversations. One evening, after a particularly long day of auditions, I returned home to find Mrs. Larson waiting for me. "Emily, dear, I must warn you about something," she said, her voice trembling. "This building, it has a history, a dark one." I laughed it off, attributing her words to old age and superstition. But the whispers grew louder, and soon I started seeing things. Shadows flitted across the walls, and cold drafts swept through my apartment, even on the hottest nights. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just my imagination. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered down to the basement, hoping to find some old furniture or decorations to spruce up my apartment. The basement was damp and musty, filled with forgotten relics of the past. As I rummaged through old boxes, I found an old film reel labeled "The Lost Starlet, 1952. Curious, I took the reel back to my apartment and borrowed a projector from Mrs. Larson. As the film began to play, I was captivated by the beauty of the young actress on the screen. Her name was Evelyn Rose, and she had an ethereal quality that made it impossible to look away. But as the film progressed, it took a dark turn. Evelyn's performances grew more frantic, her eyes filled with terror. The final scene showed her running through the very streets of Hollywood, looking over her shoulder as if being chased. The film ended abruptly, and the whispers in my apartment grew louder, almost frantic. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and when I turned, no one was there. Panicking, I ran to Mrs. Larson's apartment, banging on her door. She let me in, her face pale and worried. "You've seen her, haven't you?" she asked. "Evelyn Rose. She was a rising star in the 50s, but she disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Some say her spirit haunts this building." I wanted to leave, to run as far away from Hollywood as possible, but something kept me there. Maybe it was my own ambition, or maybe it was a sense of responsibility to uncover the truth. I spent the next few days researching Evelyn Rose, digging through old newspapers and archives. The more I learned, the more I realized how deep the darkness ran. Evelyn had been involved with a powerful studio executive known for his ruthless tactics. There were rumors of blackmail, threats, and even occult practices. Her disappearance had been hushed up, her name forgotten by the industry that once adored her. But her spirit had never left, trapped in a building that had witnessed her rise and fall. Determined to find answers, I continued my investigation, not realizing the true horror that awaited me. The whispers grew more insistent, guiding me towards a truth that Hollywood had buried long ago. My days were consumed by the mystery of Evelyn Rose. The more I dug, the more I found myself entangled in a web of Hollywood's darkest secrets. The whispers in my apartment became almost comforting, guiding me towards clues that seemed impossible to find otherwise. It was as if Evelyn herself was leading me. One evening, I visited the Hollywood Historical Society, hoping to find more information about Evelyn and her disappearance. The curator, an elderly man named Mr. Whitaker, greeted me with a knowing smile. "Ah, Evelyn Rose," he said. "A tragic story. So much talent, lost to the dark underbelly of this town." He led me to a dusty archive room filled with old newspapers and forgotten records. As I sifted through the files, I found an article from 1952 about a gala held at a luxurious mansion in Hollywood Hills. Evelyn had attended, and it was the last time she was seen in public. The mansion belonged to Arthur Blackwood, the powerful studio executive I had read about. Mr. Whitaker noticed my interest. Blackwood was notorious for his connections to the occult, he said. He believed he could harness the power of the stars for his own gain. Many young starlets were drawn to him, but few escaped unscathed. The whispers in the room seemed to grow louder, urging me to visit the mansion. I thanked Mr. Whitaker and made my way to the Hollywood Hills. The mansion, once grand and opulent, now stood abandoned and decaying. I felt a shiver of anticipation and fear as I approached the entrance. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, revealing a grand foyer covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the whispers became a cacophony of voices. I could almost see shadows flitting across the walls, remnants of the glamorous parties that had once taken place here. As I explored the mansion, I found a hidden staircase leading to a basement. The air grew colder with each step, and my flashlight flickered ominously. The basement was filled with old film equipment and occult paraphernalia, a testament to Blackwood's twisted obsessions. In the center of the room was a large, ornate mirror. Its surface was covered in strange symbols, and as I approached, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The whispers reached a fever pitch, and the air grew heavy. I looked into the mirror, and for a moment I saw Evelyn's face staring back at me, her eyes filled with terror. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and I was thrown back by an unseen force. The room seemed to come alive, and I could feel a presence surrounding me. Desperate to escape, I stumbled back up the stairs and out of the mansion, gasping for breath. Back in my apartment, I tried to make sense of what I had experienced. The whispers were relentless, and I knew I couldn't ignore them any longer. I had to find out what had happened to Evelyn and put her spirit to rest. The next day, I visited Mrs. Larson, hoping she could shed more light on the mystery. She greeted me with a sad smile. "You're in deep now, dear," she said, "but I believe you're the one who can finally uncover the truth." Mrs. Larson revealed that she had once been a close friend of Evelyn's. She had known about Evelyn's relationship with Blackwood and the dangers she faced. Evelyn was terrified, she said. She wanted to escape, but Blackwood wouldn't let her go. With Mrs. Larson's help, I pieced together the final days of Evelyn's life. She had planned to expose Blackwood's dark practices, but he had discovered her intentions. The night of the gala, he had lured her to his mansion, promising her safety. Instead, he had used her in one of his twisted rituals, trapping her spirit in the mirror. Determined to end Evelyn's torment, I returned to the mansion with Mrs. Larson. We brought salt, candles, and a book of protective incantations. The mansion seemed even more sinister than before, but I felt a sense of resolve. We made our way to the basement, and as we prepared to perform the ritual, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. As we began the incantation, the air crackled with energy. The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, and I felt a cold hand brush against my skin. But I kept going, reciting the words with all my strength. The mirror began to glow, and I saw Evelyn's face once more, her eyes filled with gratitude. With a final burst of energy, the mirror shattered, and a wave of warmth washed over us. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Evelyn's spirit was free at last. Exhausted but relieved, Mrs. Larson and I left the mansion, knowing we had put an end to a dark chapter in Hollywood's history. The experience had changed me, but it also gave me a newfound strength. I was determined to pursue my dreams, but I would never forget the lessons I had learned about the darkness that lurks beneath the glittering facade of Hollywood. After freeing Evelyn's spirit, Mrs. Larson and I felt a sense of peace. The whispers that had tormented me vanished, and I hoped the darkness haunting Hollywood was finally dispelled. However, as I continued my life in the city of dreams, I realized that some shadows were not so easily banished. My career began to gain momentum. I landed a few small roles in commercials and indie films, and my name started circulating in casting circles. Yet, the more I ascended, the more I noticed the subtle but insidious ways Hollywood clung to its cursed legacy. The stories I uncovered about Evelyn and Blackwood were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, more sinister pattern. One evening, I received an invitation to a prestigious party at the home of Marcus Eldridge, a renowned director known for his intense and immersive films. Thrilled at the opportunity, I decided to attend. The mansion was a marvel of modern architecture, its sleek lines and minimalist design a stark contrast to Blackwood's decaying relic. The party was filled with Hollywood's elite, actors, directors, and producers mingling under the dazzling lights. Yet, beneath the glamorous surface, there was an undercurrent of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that the party was more than it appeared. As I wandered through the lavish rooms, I met Marcus himself. He was charming and charismatic, his eyes gleaming with the intensity of a man who had seen too much. He took a particular interest in me, asking about my career and ambitions. "You have a certain aura, Emily," he said, his voice smooth and captivating. "A potential that's waiting to be unlocked. I can help you achieve greatness." His words were tempting, but something about his demeanor made me wary. As the night progressed, I noticed several guests disappearing into a private room, their expressions tense and anxious. Curiosity and a sense of foreboding drew me to follow them. Inside the room, I discovered a scene that sent chills down my spine. It was reminiscent of Blackwood's occult gatherings, with candles arranged in a circle and strange symbols adorning the walls. Marcus stood at the center, chanting in a language I couldn't understand. The guests, including some of Hollywood's biggest stars, were engaged in what appeared to be a ritual. I backed away, but not before Marcus's eyes locked onto mine. "Stay, Emily," he called out, his voice echoing through the room. "Witness the true power of Hollywood." Panicking, I fled the mansion and rushed home. The next day, I contemplated what I had seen. Hollywood's dark underbelly was still alive, hidden beneath the veneer of success and glamour. I needed to uncover more, but knew it would be dangerous. My quest led me to other actors who had been in Marcus's orbit. Their stories were chillingly similar, promises of fame and fortune, followed by mysterious rituals and an overwhelming sense of dread. Many of them had achieved success, but at a great personal cost. They spoke of nightmares, paranoia, and a sense of being watched. Determined to expose the truth, I continued my investigation, gathering evidence and testimonies. I contacted a journalist, Sarah, known for her hard-hitting exposés on Hollywood's darkest secrets. She agreed to help, and together we began to piece together a story that could shake the industry to its core. One night, Sarah and I met to finalize our report. As we discussed our findings, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Stop now or face the consequences." A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to back down. Suddenly, our conversation was interrupted by a loud crash. Someone had broken into Sarah's apartment. We scrambled to gather our notes, but it was too late. A group of masked individuals stormed in, their intentions clear. They seized our evidence and destroyed everything we had worked on. "Leave this alone," one of them hissed. "You don't know the power you're dealing with." They left as quickly as they had arrived, leaving us shaken and terrified. We knew we couldn't report the incident to the police. Their reach likely extended into law enforcement. Our dreams of exposing the truth seemed shattered. Desperate and scared, I confided in Mrs. Larson. She listened intently, her expression grim. "Hollywood's darkness runs deep, dear," she said. "But you have a choice. You can either succumb to it or fight back." Determined to fight, I decided to gather allies from within the industry, those who had seen the darkness and wanted to change it. Together, we formed a covert group dedicated to exposing the truth and protecting those at risk. It was a dangerous game, but I had learned from Evelyn's fate. I wouldn't let Hollywood's darkness consume me. The whispers might have faded, but the fight had only just begun. We would shine a light on the cursed heart of Hollywood, no matter the cost. Our covert group, aptly named the Light in the Dark, consisted of a small but determined network of actors, crew members, and industry insiders who had either witnessed or been victims of Hollywood's sinister underbelly. We communicated through encrypted messages and met in secret locations, always wary of being watched. Despite the danger, our resolve strengthened as more people came forward with their stories. The common thread in all their tales was a pervasive sense of dread and the feeling that someone, or something, was always watching. The power and influence of the figures behind these dark practices were immense, but we were determined to bring them to light. One evening, I received an anonymous tip about a hidden room in Marcus Eldridge's mansion, one that supposedly contained irrefutable evidence of his and others' involvement in occult rituals and sinister dealings. The source claimed to be a former assistant who had seen too much and feared for their life. Our group planned a daring break-in to retrieve the evidence. The mansion was heavily guarded, but we had a few trusted insiders who helped us navigate its labyrinthine corridors. As we made our way to the hidden room, the air grew colder, and an unsettling feeling washed over me, reminiscent of my first encounter with Evelyn's spirit. Inside the room, we found shelves filled with books on occult practices, old film reels, and photographs documenting the rituals. Among the items was a journal that belonged to Marcus, detailing his obsession with harnessing the power of the stars and the lengths he had gone to achieve it. The final entry was chilling. The ultimate sacrifice will bring me eternal power. No one can stop me. We gathered as much evidence as we could and left the mansion undetected. The documents and recordings we found were damning, implicating not only Marcus but also several high-profile figures in the industry. It was enough to bring the darkness into the public eye. With Sarah's help, we prepared a comprehensive expose. We knew releasing it would put us all at risk, but the truth had to be told. As the publication date approached, tension among our group rose. We took precautions, avoiding any patterns in our movements and using burner phones to communicate. The night before the expose was set to be published, I received a call from Sarah. "Emily, we need to meet. I have something important to tell you." Her voice was filled with urgency and fear. We arranged to meet at a secluded park, away from prying eyes. When I arrived, Sarah looked visibly shaken. "I've been followed," she said. "They're onto us. We need to be careful." As we discussed our next steps, a car pulled up, and two men emerged. They approached us with menacing glares. "You were warned," one of them said, his voice cold. "This is your last chance to walk away." I stood my ground, my heart pounding. "We're not backing down. The truth will come out." The men exchanged glances, and for a moment, I feared the worst. But instead of attacking, they handed us a flash drive. "Consider this a gift," the other man said. "There are those within the darkness who want change too. Use this wisely." They left without another word, and Sarah and I hurried back to her apartment to examine the flash drive. It contained even more damning evidence, including video recordings of the rituals and testimonies from victims too scared to come forward publicly. It was the final piece we needed. The next day, our expose went live. The reaction was immediate and explosive. News outlets picked up the story, and social media erupted with outrage. The names and faces of Hollywood's darkest figures were exposed for all to see. There were denials and attempts at damage control, but the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. In the weeks that followed, investigations were launched, and several high-profile arrests were made. The industry was in turmoil, but there was a sense of relief among those who had suffered in silence for so long. The darkness was finally being brought to light. Our group remained vigilant, knowing that the fight was far from over. The corruption and evil in Hollywood had deep roots, and it would take time to uproot it completely. But we had made a start, and that gave us hope. As for me, my dreams of stardom had taken a backseat to a new purpose. I continued to act, but my heart was now set on helping others and ensuring that Hollywood's dark secrets could no longer harm the innocent. Evelyn's spirit had found peace, and so had I, in knowing that I was part of a movement to bring justice and light to a place that had long been shrouded in shadows. The weeks following the publication of our expose were chaotic. Hollywood was in an uproar, with many powerful figures scrambling to cover their tracks or deny involvement. Yet, despite the arrests and ongoing investigations, the sense of unease never completely dissipated. The darkness we had exposed seemed to linger, its roots deeper than we had anticipated. One evening, as I was preparing for a small role in an upcoming film, I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "You think you've won, Emily, but this is far from over. We are watching." The threat sent a chill down my spine, but it also fueled my determination. I shared the call with the members of the Light in the Dark, and we decided to tighten our security measures. Despite our victory, the battle was ongoing, and we had to stay vigilant. Sarah and I continued to work on follow-up pieces, diving deeper into the murky waters of Hollywood's hidden horrors. One name kept resurfacing in our research: Victor Crane, a reclusive producer with a reputation for making stars out of nobodies. Rumors swirled around him, tales of manipulation, coercion, and worse. Yet, no one had ever managed to gather concrete evidence against him. Determined to bring Crane to justice, we focused our efforts on uncovering his secrets. Our break came when a former assistant of Crane's, Lisa, agreed to speak with us. She had been in hiding for years, too terrified to come forward until now. Meeting in a secluded cafe, Lisa recounted her harrowing experiences. "Victor Crane is a monster," she said, her voice trembling. "He preys on the desperate and the ambitious. I've seen things I can't unsee." She provided us with detailed accounts and ledgers that documented Crane's illicit activities, including a list of victims who had mysteriously vanished after working with him. It was the evidence we needed, but it also painted a grim picture of the lengths Crane would go to silence those who opposed him. Armed with this new information, Sarah and I prepared another exposé. We knew this would be even more dangerous than our previous one. Crane had powerful connections and a ruthless reputation. The night before we were set to publish, I received another threatening call. "Back off, or you'll regret it." We decided to proceed, knowing the risks. The exposé went live the next morning, and the reaction was immediate. The revelations about Crane's practices sent shockwaves through Hollywood. His name became synonymous with corruption and abuse, and law enforcement agencies were pressured to act. However, the backlash was swift. Sarah's apartment was broken into again, and I received several anonymous threats. Despite the mounting danger, our resolve remained unshaken. The truth was out there, and we couldn't turn back now. As the investigations into Crane intensified, our group received a message from an unexpected source. It was from Crane himself, requesting a meeting. Against my better judgment, and with the group's approval, I agreed to meet him, hoping it might lead to more evidence. We arranged to meet in a public park, with members of the Light in the Dark watching from a distance. Crane arrived, looking composed and eerily calm. "You've caused quite a stir, Emily," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "but you're playing a dangerous game." "I'm not afraid of you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Your time is up." Crane smiled, a chilling expression that sent shivers down my spine. "You don't understand the forces at play here. Hollywood's darkness isn't just about people. It's about power, control, and something far more sinister." Before I could respond, he handed me a folder. "Consider this a parting gift. Use it wisely." He turned and walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. The folder contained a series of documents and photographs implicating several high-profile figures in a secret society that dated back decades. It was a revelation that suggested the darkness in Hollywood was more than just human corruption. It was almost supernatural in its reach. Our group was stunned. The implications were staggering, and we knew we had only scratched the surface. We decided to tread carefully, using the information to expose more wrongdoings while protecting ourselves. In the following months, more arrests were made, and Hollywood began to slowly transform. The darkness was being dragged into the light, but we knew the fight was far from over. The forces we were up against were powerful and deeply entrenched. Yet we remained united and vigilant, knowing that the truth was our most potent weapon. Hollywood might be a place of dreams, but we had uncovered its nightmare, and we were committed to ensuring that future generations wouldn't fall prey to its cursed legacy. Months passed, and the transformation in Hollywood was palpable. The industry was beginning to reckon with its past, and more victims felt empowered to share their stories. Yet, the shadows still lingered, and we knew that Victor Crane's warning had not been idle. Our investigation into the secret society mentioned in Crane's documents revealed a chilling history. This group, known as the Luminaries, had roots stretching back to the early days of Hollywood. They believed in harnessing the power of human ambition and desperation to fuel their own success, using dark rituals and sacrifices to maintain their grip on the industry. One name stood out in the documents: Helena Thorne, a celebrated actress from the 1930s who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her connection to the Luminaries suggested she had either been a victim or a willing participant. Her case became the key to understanding the full extent of the society's influence. Our group, The Light in the Dark, decided to delve deeper into Helena Thorne's disappearance. We discovered that she had last been seen at an exclusive party at a mansion eerily similar to the one where Evelyn Rose had vanished. The mansion was now a historical landmark, rarely visited and shrouded in legend. Determined to uncover the truth, we planned one final daring expedition to the mansion. Equipped with cameras, recording devices, and protective charms, we ventured into the heart of Hollywood's darkness. The air was thick with tension as we approached the decaying structure, its grandeur long faded into ruin. Inside, the atmosphere was oppressive, as if the walls themselves held the weight of decades of secrets. We split up, each of us exploring different parts of the mansion. The whispers, once dormant, returned with a vengeance, echoing through the empty halls. In the basement, I found an old study filled with books on the occult and photographs of Hollywood stars from the past. At the center of the room was an altar, covered in dust but unmistakable in its purpose. It was here that the Luminaries had conducted their rituals, using the energy of the aspiring stars who had been drawn into their web. As I examined the altar, a hidden compartment caught my eye. Inside was Helena Thorne's diary, its pages yellowed with age but intact. Her entries painted a picture of a young actress drawn into the Luminaries' circle, first with promises of fame and fortune, then with threats and coercion. The final entry was chilling. They say I must give myself fully to the cause. I fear what that means. If you find this, know that I tried to escape, but their power is too great. My heart ached for Helena, a victim of the same darkness that had claimed so many others. Her diary was the evidence we needed to expose the full extent of the Luminaries' corruption. I rejoined my group, and we decided to leave, our mission complete. As we exited the mansion, we were confronted by Victor Crane and several of his associates. His face was twisted with rage. "You should have stayed out of this, Emily," he snarled. "You don't know what you've unleashed." But we were ready. Our group stood firm, and I held up Helena's diary. "The world will know the truth about you and your society. Your time is over." Crane laughed, a hollow sound. "You think this is the end? The Luminaries have survived for a century. We are eternal." Before he could react, the authorities, tipped off by Sarah, arrived. They arrested Crane and his associates, finally ending their reign of terror. The mansion, now a crime scene, would be sealed off, its dark history exposed to the world. In the aftermath, Hollywood began to change. The Light in the Dark continued to support victims and expose corruption, but we knew that vigilance was key. The fight against the darkness would never truly be over, but we had made a significant step towards a brighter future. As for me, I found solace in my work, both as an actress and an advocate for change. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a sense of peace. Evelyn Rose, Helena Thorne, and countless others could finally rest, their stories told, their spirits free. Hollywood, the city of dreams, would always have its shadows. But as long as there were those willing to shine a light into the darkness, hope would endure. And that, more than anything, was the legacy we aim to leave behind.